Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my May 2019 reading wrap-up. If you're not already aware, I do weekly entertainment wrap-ups of everything I read, watch, and listen to, but today we're just talking about the books. I also didn't quite realize how many books I read this month until I looked at my spreadsheet and went, I am gonna run out of camera battery at least once, if not twice, while shooting this video. In terms of readathons this month, I participated in the Asian readathon and sort of participated in the latter half of Half-a-Ween-a-thon. I'm going to start with the nerdy, hardcore stats and charts and then get into what I read. I'm also going to do this with a glass of white Zinfandel because I'm an adult, it's my day off, and I have a lot of books to talk about. In May, I read 29 books and DNF'd one book for a total of 7,302 pages. That takes into account converting audiobook minutes to pages, so 2,806 of those pages were actually about 83 hours of audio. The age breakdown for these books was 23 adult books, 5 YA books, and 2 middle grade books. I read 18 novels, 11 graphic novels, and 1 anthology. This month I read a lot of contemporary, fantasy, and nonfiction, as well as some speculative fiction, historical fiction, horror, and sci-fi. If you adjust by page count, not a lot changes. Most of these books, no surprise, came from the library, but I already owned one was a gift, and another one was new. I read 11 paperbacks, 9 hardcovers, 9 audiobooks, and 1 ebook. Since I read so many graphic novels this month, a third of my page counts are in the 100 to 199 page range, and I was surprised to realize that I read 12 2019 releases this month. Most of these books were by female authors, and half the protagonists were female. In terms of setting, half of these books took place in the United States, but I also had reads from the UK, Canada, other worlds, Japan, Malaysia, Sweden, and Bangladesh. In terms of diversity, we had a little bit of disability rep, queer content, works that had to do with race, feminist content, some intersectional content, but about a quarter of these books had no diversity to speak of. In terms of star ratings this month, I had 1 2-star book, 2 2.5-star books, 4 3-star books, 6 3.5-star books, 7 4-star books, 3 4.5-star books, and 7 5-star books. Let's start with our lowest rated read and work our way up to the highest, shall we? Obviously, the book that got 2 stars is the book that I DNF'd, and that was The Dark by David Cassidy. I got about a quarter of the way in through this one. I was reading it for Half-a-Ween-a-thon. I picked it up because it was supposed to be spooky and filled with horror, and it had those aspects. However, every time this author talked about women, it was like she boobed boobily down the stairs, and everybody had to talk about everybody else's boobs and just be really gross about women, and I was not here for it. If all of those aspects had been taken out and maybe just the grossest character was the only one to objectify women, maybe I would have been able to read this book, but as it stood, I could not. On to my 2.5-star reads. Both of these are non-fiction. The first one I read for a local book club, and that is The God Delusion by Richard Dawkins. This one is about atheism and trying to make the point about why God can't exist. And the thing about this book is he's not wrong, but he's an asshole. In this book, he goes through all the cases people have for God existing and explains with logic why that is not correct, or at least is extremely unlikely. Being an atheist, he was kind of preaching to the choir on this one. However, I didn't even have to get into the first chapter of this book before I found something that I just wanted to punch him in the face for, and that's that he said atheists of this day, being 2006 when this was published, are just as persecuted as gay people from 50 years ago. No, friend, no. At least a couple of times throughout this book as well, Dawkins liked to talk about the feminists as though we're somebody to just pat on the head and say, you did a very good job, aw, you think you're people. So although his actual arguments for atheism seem pretty sound and would have gotten him a much higher rating, because he expressed these other views in really patronizing ways, no, friend, no. My other 2.5-star read was Hiding in the Bathrooms. This is a book about being introverted, and I thought it was going to be a grand scope about being introverted, but it was very, very specific about corporate culture and being introverted, which is not something that you would have figured out from just the subtitle on the front of the book. And I was listening to it and going, okay, eventually she's going to talk about like life outside of work, and no. That really didn't happen. If you want a really good book about introversion, read Quiet by Susan Cain. On to my 3-star reads, the first one being Death Threat by Vivek Shraya. This is a very short graphic novel about Vivek getting a death threat. My problem with this one is it became more about creating the project about getting the death threat than really exploring how one felt during the death threat. I also read Descender, Tin Stars, which is volume 1, and this was an interesting world. It's kind of a space age world where people are living on different planets. It's not Earth-based, and it's kind of a robots uprising story. There are a ton of volumes in this series, and obviously this is just the first one, so I didn't get very far into this story, but I liked what I saw. I also read Moonstruck volume 2, Some Enchanted Evening. This is cute. The story is a little bit disjointed, but I also really enjoy the characters, so I didn't mind that too much. The art is also really adorable. This follows a few characters who work in a coffee shop, but in this world pretty much everybody has different forms of powers. For example, one of our main characters is a centaur, one of our main characters is a werewolf, she's got a werewolf girlfriend, it's pretty cute. But then there's this sorority and this fraternity on the campus that are both fairy-based, and shenanigans go down. Like I said, really cute, but nothing to get overly excited about. My last 3-star read is the first novel on this list so far, and that's The Library of the Lost and Found. If you've been here for a while, you probably know that I like bookish things. I like books set in bookstores or libraries, and this one had both. Martha lives in a small English town. She volunteers at the local library. In fact, she volunteers to do a lot of things for a lot of people, and nobody seems very grateful about it. As the book goes on, we find out that her doing things for other people really stopped her from focusing on her own life, and opportunities have gone right by her. This book is very similar to the Book of Speculation, which I read last month, in that she shows up to the library one day and there is a book waiting there for her, and there's a little bit of mystery behind it. Obviously, I enjoyed that mystery aspect and her figuring out where this book came from and what it means, but I also really enjoyed that we saw some flashbacks to her childhood from her mother's perspective, who is now deceased. I really enjoyed reading this book, but I saw the plot points coming and I knew about them ahead of time, so they weren't really surprising when they happened. On to our 3.5-star reads, and right back into graphic novel territory. First, we're going to talk about Umbrella Academy. I read the first volume. I really liked it. It's very strange. And mostly I read it because I would eventually like to watch the Netflix show, but I'm waiting to read volume 2 and volume 3. Volume 2 is almost on its way to me from the library, and volume 3 is still on order at the library, so it's going to be a little while. A bird just flew into my window, but it appears to be fine. It bounced and left. Okay. Anyway, volume 3 is going to be a little while before I'll get to it, so it'll be a while before I get to the show. I deserve a sip of wine after that. In Umbrella Academy, there was this day where 42 babies were born kind of out of nowhere, like their mothers weren't even pregnant and suddenly they were giving birth. And although most of those babies died, 7 of them were collected and adopted by this one man who basically wanted to figure out if they had powers, and of course they did, because otherwise this would be not interesting. Well, really, 6 out of the 7 had powers, and that leads to some strife. From there, we flash forward. There are lots of misadventures. It's very hard to describe this succinctly, but if you like weird things, you're gonna like it. I also read volumes 7 and 8 of The Wicked and the Divine. This is a beautiful series. The premise of the series is every 90 years, 12 gods are reincarnated into the bodies of teenagers. They are basically rock stars, but they will die within 2 years. These 2 volumes really went into the backstory of why this became a thing. And other than that, there's not a lot I can tell you about it besides the art is absolutely gorgeous, so if you're at all interested in this premise, pick up the first volume. Next, I read this book called Journal, which was found by Christine and Joyce Atkinson. The premise of this book is these 2 people bought a desk at a flea market, they went to refurbish it, and they found this journal in the back of one of the drawers. I showed a little bit of a flip through of it in my weekly wrap-up, so I'll try to link that in places, but this book looks like a scrapbook, but is also kind of a diary, and it's about this woman whose husband has recently gotten a job in New York City and they live in Houston, so they are about to move there. But she stayed behind to sell the house, and in addition, her mother, who used to live with them, recently passed, so she's dealing with missing her husband, she's dealing with missing her mother, she's dealing with her children, and then also having to deal with selling the house. This is one of those books that I just saw at the library, picked up, read a couple of pages, and then took it home with me because I needed to finish it. There's definitely a mystery aspect to this one, although if you read the full title of the book, you'll pretty much figure out how it's going to end. I figured out pretty early on how it was going to end, like how the exact plot was going to go. But regardless, very much enjoyed it. The group read for the Asian Readathon was 1000 Beginnings and Endings, which is an anthology of different Asian myths retold by different Asian authors. I really enjoyed it. There's not much to say about anthologies because I think there were like 15 stories in this one, and I'm not going to go through every single story. And obviously enjoy some stories more than other stories. For example, there was one about a ghost festival that I really enjoyed. There's also another one about someone's mother being trapped in an online gaming platform after she died, also very enjoyable. But either way, if you like short story anthologies, this is a very good one and you should pick it up. And finally, we come to Outlaw Marriages. This is a collection of 15 couples throughout history who would have been married if they were allowed to be. The twist on this collection is chances are you've heard of at least one of the people in each of these couples. Or at least I imagine that's more true if you live in the United States because it is United States centric. And the biggest takeaway for me from this collection is that a lot of these people that are well known had this person backing them up at home that nobody knew about because it was kind of dangerous to be openly queer. Out of my 4-star reads, we're going to start out with another couple graphic novels, the first one being Lady Killer Volume 2. I didn't actually read Volume 1, but I saw this one was going back to its home library as an interlibrary loan, so I kind of snagged it and read it really quickly and then returned it. This one either takes place in the 50s or early 60s, and it's about a housewife who is a murderer for hire. That's really all you need to know. It's fantastic. Next is My Lesbian Experience with Loneliness. This is an autobiographical graphic novel about this woman who had to repress her sexual desires and didn't really understand because of mental health struggles. One, that she had mental health struggles, and two, what her desire meant. Upon picking this up, I had no idea that it had anything to do with mental health struggles, so definitely know that going in because there are some things that could be triggering. But all in all, this is a fantastic autobiography. I feel like I'm really whipping through these and I feel bad that I'm not talking about them more in depth, and then I remember that I've talked about most of them before. Some of them I'll be talking about in my next weekly wrap-up, and also there are 30 of them, so I guess it's okay that I'm going quickly. Let me know if you think I'm being too brief, and I will talk more in depth in my next monthly wrap-up if that's what's happening. Next we have Girl Wash Your Face by Rachel Hollis. This is a nonfiction book about the lies that we tell ourselves and how the specific person got out from under those lies. Rachel Hollis has this wonderful conversational tone about her work, and then also brings in these very, very personal stories that really drive the points home and make it feel like if she can overcome something, you can also overcome something. Additionally, she narrates her own audiobooks, which I always love when people do. Next we have We Sold Our Souls by Grady Hendrix, which I mostly listen to while walking around in a forest, so I will link that vlog in places. It's pretty easy to figure out the very large plot point in this book, which is that this band has sold their souls to the devil. However, most of them don't know that. In the first real chapter of this book, we meet our protagonist, who used to be in this band that was touring for like 10 years. She taught herself how to play guitar, she loves metal, but then eventually the band fell apart and one of the band members is off being really famous, and because of a contract she signed, she's working at a Holiday Inn. This had some really fun supernatural horror elements to it. It also had these plot points where you thought things were going to go one way and they went a completely different direction, which I really appreciated. I love when a book can surprise me like that. Next we have a reread of Good Omens in anticipation of the TV show coming out, which I'm filming this on the 30th, but it'll probably go up on the 31st because this is going to take a lot of editing. May 31st is when the TV show comes out. Guess what I'm doing all day on May 31st? Watching the TV show. In fact, I might vlog it. I haven't decided yet, but that might happen. Good Omens concerns a very large cast of characters and has to do with the apocalypse. Since it is co-authored by Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman, it is full of very English wit. I found it hilarious, although it is not without its faults, which is why it always gets about a 4-star for me. It was originally published in 1990, and it shows. Next we have Final Draft by Riley Redgate, which apparently I read just a little bit too soon because it's actually the Dragons and Tea book club pick for June, which is very funny because I sent Melanie from Mel to the Annie a picture of one of the pages when I was reading it saying, hey, I found you an on-the-page pansexual character, and she was like, oh my goodness, don't tell anyone, but that is our pick for the book club next month, which has already been announced, which is why I can tell you this story now. In any case, our main character is biracial, she's pansexual, she's figuring out her feelings for people, and she's also having her world expanded by this creative writing class she's taken. She knows she's always wanted to be a writer, but something switches up at school that makes her look outside of what she usually does. This one also definitely goes into some mental health stuff, so just know that going in case that is a trigger for you. My last 4-star read is The Proposal, I got an arc for The Wedding Party, which is the third in this companion trilogy series, whatever it's going to end up being, and realized I hadn't read the second one and figured I should probably read the second one before reading the third one. The Proposal is about this girl named Nick who is at a baseball game because the douche bro that she's dating wants to go for his birthday, and all of a sudden he's proposing after them knowing each other for 5 months, and he doesn't even know how to spell her name. As a surprise to no one, she turns him down, but they've been on the Jumbotron, people are starting to swarm her, and this very nice gentleman saves her from these circumstances. She's not looking for anything serious, he's not looking for anything serious. Why not give it a go? What can I say? I like the way that Jasmine Guillory writes romances, and I really enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to reading the third in the series. Okay, we're on to our 4.5s, which means we only have 10 more things to talk about. Oh my goodness. First is Faith Dreamside. Faith is a comic book character that I really like because she's a woman who has powers, but she is also plus size, and that is amazing. She's kind of on the run from the authorities at this point because they think that she's murdered somebody, but that's a whole big thing from this different part of the comic series. And at this point, even though she's under the radar, somebody comes to her and needs help, and she goes to make sure that happens. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't say that she is nerdy as all get out, and I love her for it. Next, we have Dragon Pearl by Yoon Ha Lee. This book was amazing. I can't believe that so much plot and so many characters and so much magic is just in this standalone book. It was fantastic. Camera died, but we're back at it. This book is about Min, whose family has fox magic, but that magic is thought to be extinct, so they don't tell anyone about it. Her brother went off and joined a space academy, and they get word that he turned traitor and is looking for this thing called the Dragon Pearl, and she figures, that doesn't sound like something my brother would do, so she goes on this epic journey to find out what happened to him. Although her mother definitely doesn't want them using fox magic, she does, and she's very, very good at it. One of the things you can do with fox magic is you can shapeshift, which comes in very handy at very many points throughout this novel. This book is fantastic because of the magic, the relationships, the different genders that you see throughout this novel. There was a plot twist that made me very upset and made me cry, so you know if a middle grade book can make you cry, it's good. I also read The Weight of Our Sky, which took place in May of 1969 in Malaysia, which is a point in history where there was kind of a civil war happening. That makes it sound much more organized than it was, but at that point, basically, there was a lot of racism within the different communities. So Malays were against Chinese, Chinese were against Malays, and then all of the other people that lived in those communities kind of either had to pick a side or were also persecuted depending on who came knocking on their door. Our protagonist in this book also has OCD, but her and her family don't know what that is because it was the 1960s, so her family thinks that she is being possessed by a jinn. Horrifyingly, the way that this manifests itself is she imagines her mother's death several times a day. And obviously when we hit this very stressful situation, that gets much, much worse. This was an absolutely heartbreaking read that I just could not put down. On to my 5-star reads, the first one being Book Love by Debbie Tung. This is exactly what it sounds like. It is a short collection of these graphic novel panels where this girl really likes books, and everything in it is very relatable to me as a person. I also read Front Desk by Kelly Yang, which is about Mia, whose family has immigrated from China to the United States, and they're living and working at this motel near Disneyland. However, the conditions are terrible. The person that owns the hotel keeps jerking them around, and they started using one of the rooms to hide immigrants who need a place to stay. This book was so amazing and touched on so many different things, and I absolutely love that, especially about a middle grade book. I love seeing all of these things in the hands of younger readers. This book talked about immigration, working conditions, privilege, how people will take advantage of you if they think that they can. Maya also made these beautiful friendships, and it was just everything I needed. The best graphic novel I read this month was Man-Eaters Volume 1. This takes place in a world where toxoplasmosis has morphed in such a way that if you're affected by it and you are a woman, you could turn into a man-eating cat during your period. I mean, if that doesn't make you want to pick it up, I don't know if anything will. However, I will add that it is incredibly witty. There are some things that take place throughout the book and in the society to kind of adjust to this that are just fantastic, and I think that everyone should read it, and I'm looking forward to the second volume so much. My favorite nonfiction of the month was Girl Stop Apologizing, which is also by Rachel Hollis. This actually I listened to first, and it's the first book that I read this month, and it really got me pumped up, and it got me looking forward to making goals and getting to them, which is kind of the point of it, I think. I think that there's this societal expectation that self-help books are going to be hokey and you have to hide that you're reading them because then people will know there's something wrong with you or whatever. But as I said before, Rachel just talks in this very conversational tone, and it's like a friend is giving you advice and telling you that you can do things, you just have to put in the work. This is the major reason why I've actually been using my exercise bike instead of using it as a storage space for this entire month. I use it every day except for Tuesdays because my day is way too busy on Tuesdays. I've also started going on really long walks, I'm watching what I'm eating, and I'm very excited about the progress I'm making in my life because I'm making some healthy choices that I hope last me into the winter months when seasonal affective disorder is gonna bite me in the ass again. Next we have to talk about Beartown, which is absolutely beautifully written and heartbreaking. This one was sent to me by Chelsea from Chelsea Darling Reads as part of a Contemporary-a-thon giveaways, and I'm so happy that I picked this book. This book follows a large cast of characters in a small Scandinavian town that is very much focused on hockey and a sexual assault that takes place and what that means for the town as a whole. Obviously this is going to get very much into rape culture, but it also gets into all of these different aspects of these other lives that are just so fascinating, and I know that there's a sequel and now I'm going to have to read it. We've made it to our last two books. If you've made it this far in this video, congratulations. Put a purple heart down in the comments just so I know how far you got. Choosing the top out of these last two was super difficult, and honestly it could flip either way, but I have to talk about one of them first, so we're gonna do that. My penultimate read for the month was I Wish You All the Best by Mason Devers. This book is about Ben, who comes out to their parents as non-binary and is immediately kicked out of their house. This is an own voices portrayal, as Mason Devers is also non-binary. Ben quickly has to find a way to survive and ends up living with their estranged sister, who moved away from their family home 10 years ago and never looked back. Suddenly Ben finds themselves in this whole new school environment for their very last semester of high school, and their future seems so up in the air. Fortunately, they have the support of Miriam, their best friend. Unfortunately, their best friend lives in California, and to survive the rest of high school, Ben decides to go back into the closet. Ben forms a friendship with this really cute boy named Nathan at school and has to start thinking about whether or not it could be something else and whether or not that's smart, considering Nathan will be going away for school and Ben doesn't know what they're doing. Needless to say, given where this is on the list, I absolutely adore this book. It is 100% worth the hype of it coming out this month and everyone talking about it. You should read it. Additionally, I consumed this as an audiobook, and the audiobook was amazingly narrated. I preemptively changed the battery in my camera knowing that it would probably die in the middle of me talking about the best book that I read this month, which is The Love and Lies of Roxana Ali by Sabina Khan. This book is about Roxana, who is the daughter of Muslim Bangladeshi parents who have immigrated to the United States, and they don't know that their daughter is a lesbian with a girlfriend. Roxana is understandably scared about telling her parents, so she's decided that she's not going to tell them until she is far away at university. Unfortunately, they find out sooner than she would have liked, and they do not take it well. When the family hears that her grandmother has fallen sick in Bangladesh, they go back to Bangladesh to visit her, and her parents start looking for boys for her to marry. I spent so much of this book just being incredibly upset at her parents for not listening to her, not understanding that you can't choose your sexuality, and not understanding that them just picking a boy for her was ridiculous. Obviously, with a plot like this, there is going to be a lot of heartbreak, and I'm not here to tell you that that's not going to be the case, because it definitely is. There were points when I was out in public, standing at bus stops or on buses, where I was very happy I was wearing sunglasses so that random strangers wouldn't wonder why I was crying. However, in addition to that, there are so many beautiful community-minded moments in this book that are really based on the culture and the community and the love that one feels, and especially a lot of those moments had to do with food. This book made me so hungry. I wanted to try everything they were eating within this book. This book was full of beautiful things, it was full of heartbreaking things, it was full of things that filled me with rage, and because of the amount of emotion that I had at all times while listening to it, that's why it's my favorite book of the month. If you want to hear me talk more about these books, or other books for that matter, the playlist for my weekly entertainment wrap-ups is always linked down below. If you've read any of these or want to read any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. My next monthly wrap-up is going to be in a completely different location, because at the end of June, I will be at my brother's house on the other side of the country, so who knows what my reading life is going to be in June and July, because I will be elsewhere for portions of each of those months. Be sure to give this a like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very, very soon. Bye!